The globe is a remarkable place. We live in the most beautiful environment anyone could ever have imagined. So for me, the fact we were actually able to cause change on such a massive scale makes me sort of want to help all the other organisms there.
Yeah, I get excited about some of the rare species that pop up, but yeah, I worry about not finding them ever again.
Even the remotest, deepest parts of the ocean are going to have substantial changes. It's like we're messing up something that's perfect.
I feel strongly, and I am concerned.
Our way of life is destroying things like a coral reef that is a work of beauty of nature, and irreversibly. That made me actually have tears in my eyes.
My research focuses on marine microalgae in two major environments, one being the Antarctic and the other being the tropics. Both areas are considered hotspots for climate change.
My decision to research climate change is actually driven more by the plants, because plants are stuck where they start to sprout as a seed, and so they have to cope with those conditions. So I use thermographic images to measure the temperature of the leaves and know exactly what the plant itself is experiencing.
We can understand the way the ocean circulates, the way the atmosphere circulates through equations. I just found that beautiful.
I love my microalgae, so they're incredibly beautiful. When you look through a microscope, it's what got me into them, is that they're the diversity of shapes and colours, and they're just incredible, not only what they do for the environment, but just to look at. Feeling sorry for them is probably a strange term, because they're not essentially sentient beings, but certainly with corals there is that. So we have this symbiosis between an animal and an algal cell, and you see this death, and that is a devastation. That is upsetting to work with that.
Sometimes you see photographs of massive regions where forests that are thousands and thousands of years old have been removed just for short kicks in agricultural productivity. That is something that is deeply distressing.
Some of the results are disheartening.
And most of the time we talk about it within our own groups.
The more and more evidence we build, the more and more findings we get, we're not seeing the same sort of acceleration with response to try and mitigate that. And I think that keeps me up at night, that upsets me.
Certainly there are still going to be things living out there, but the loss of biodiversity I think is the most concerning thing.
It's incredibly close to my heart, I guess, and a passion, because it's so all-encompassing.
We just keep talking about it, we keep confirming the same fact, so that's a bit frustrating.
So any new research that comes out can have a very strong emotional impact on me, particularly if there's that level of devastation or, you know, these things that are being lost from our environment.
I think quite a lot of climate scientists, when reviewing their results, don't translate that into the real world, because if we did, things would get deeply depressing.
It's been taught for a while that you should remove emotion.
All of our experiments are designed so that you must stay objective.
We kind of keep ourselves separate from the emotional consequences of some of the things we work on. I think that's a defense strategy.
But we all chose to do this for a reason, and I think we have to acknowledge that we are emotional beings, because if we don't, we actually introduce bias into our experiments by not recognising that we have emotions.
Most scientists are incredibly passionate about what they do, particularly in environmental sciences. What usually drives us is this need to understand, but also a need to make a difference.
It's important that science gets to the truth. It's not someone's opinion, it's actually reality. Where that runs into problems is if you as the scientist have to be unemotional, how do you explain to someone how serious the problem is without showing that you care about this problem? I used to think that activism was not a job for scientists, and now I think it is.
I'm quite interested in politics and how they don't work.
We are always thinking in countries. This is not a country-based problem, this is a planetary problem. I think we don't have a political framework to actually deal with global planetary processes.
There is really rare chance for scientists to spread this message to people that have the power to do something about it.
Science is difficult to convey in short bites. The uncertainty in it is hard to explain, and when you only have a sample size of one planet.
The cautious approach that scientists have with disseminating information means that there's scope for media to say, so you don't know. So there's another side to the story. And this whole 50-50 debate that's been going on with climate change for the last 20 to 30 years has actually been a complete farce, because there is no 50-50 debate as far as the science is concerned.
The reporting of climate change is improving. We now no longer have to provide the other side of the argument because we've all come to the realisation there is no other side.
Scientific reporting doesn't necessarily need a balanced argument because it is generally the consensus and it follows evidence, not opinion. Scientists have to be, some of us, not all of us, have to be outspoken and have to defend the science to the public.
But we have to be objective enough for this, otherwise we stop being scientists and are doing something else than science.
Look, it's healthy. Arguments and discussion is healthy.
I think we're careful in what we say, but there's no taboo, and I actually think the stronger we are in our replies, the better.
I have occasionally been threatened with legal action, and I've been threatened with "I know where you live." In fact, there is a general narrative amongst the climate scientists that if you're not getting some form of threat, you're probably not communicating the reality of the science.
Why do you think we as a society have so much trouble acting on the findings that scientists such as yourself present?
Comfort. It's very simple. It requires effort to make change, and I think complacency and comfort is a really big factor in that. I also think misinformation can be playing a role in that, but also the lag time.
These changes are gradual if you consider a human lifespan.
People are unable to get their heads around this because it works on such a long time scale.
People aren't seeing the effect of climate change right now. We are as scientists, because we're looking at incremental shifts, we're seeing projections, we're seeing how this will play out. I think for society it's very difficult.
I think it's a problem that we can't see climate change.
What we do can affect the whole globe, so it's not always a within your own backyard situation.
And as a consequence, you don't feel the impetus to change your behaviours.
To cause that change, you've really got to try and show them that it's happening now.
All that we have to do to sort out the climate change problem is profoundly change everything we do. We have to actually sort out where we get our energy from and stop doing it by burning fossil fuels. So a very simple statement, but a profoundly confronting statement to many interested sectors, many people who don't want to change.
Has the prospect of significant climate change affected the choices you make in your life, and if so, how?
To a degree, not to as much as they probably should as a citizen of this world.
I don't drive. I'm really strongly against that. I ride a push bike.
I've never owned a car in my life.
I've moved much more towards solar. I have a garden that I grow vegetables in. There's a whole range of things I do. But most of all, I try to influence government policy in terms of its emissions of carbon?
I think the main problem is the continuous growing of the population. When the population grows, there's a demand for all the consumption.
That's another thing I've chosen not to do, is have children. And that's probably partly because the world is doomed to...
But are scientists allowed to say the world is doomed, or is there also...
No, I don't think it's a good way to be, because I don't think it helps people make changes.
If humans wipe themselves out, we'd just be one of the millions of species that has already been wiped out.
I always ask myself whether it matters whether Homo sapiens wipe themselves out with climate change, and quite frankly, as an environmental scientist, Homo sapiens are irrelevant on this planet. We can do a lot of damage, but we're top of the food chain, we can disappear and homeostasis will recover.
The world would bounce back. It's homeostasis.
It could often be the best outcome for the rest of the species.
I think it would be great.
Well, climate change will not wipe humans out, at least as a whole species. It will wipe out the most vulnerable and wipe out their lifestyles, livelihoods, cultures, whole countries.
So a lot of my sadness about climate change is actually the loss of what we already have, the fact we're not maintaining this amazing place and this biodiversity.
My research focuses on heat waves. I had this moment of, I guess, immense realisation when I was 6 or 7 months pregnant with my daughter, and to think she will experience a world much more adverse than currently, as will her children and my grandchildren.
Future generations, they're not going to see the same things that we see in the world.
I think I deal with it by being naively hopeful. That's how I deal with it. And wine.
In my personal opinion, it's too late. In my honest personal opinion, it's too late for us to do anything. The end is nigh. But I won't say that. I couldn't possibly say that.
Why not?
Because if I present that idea to people, they say, well, what's the point of me doing anything?
It's never too late to do anything. That would negate an even worse outcome.
However, if we all pull in together, we may have a chance. Do I think we can all pull in together? I don't.
My optimism for action on climate change is increasing because the world has actually come together, and we saw with the Paris Agreement finally that we had global consensus to agree to actually do something about it.
We are actually coming up with solutions that actually make us live better through, for example, a green economy, or through more sustainable lifestyles and energy sources.
Yeah, where we are making a difference is important.
But then those changes require, in a sense, a sacrifice of certain comforts.
If you see it as a threat, you'll fight back against the things that are encouraging you to change. If you see it as an opportunity, you'll embrace it. I think we should be driven by opportunity, not by fear of change.
I think the majority of people do accept climate change as an issue, but it's such an overwhelming, vast problem that they don't know what to do about it, and there's not a lot of help to do something about it.
There is a solution. We have all the tools to move to a low carbon economy and change the way we live. It's the political will and the social will. So we really need to come together as a global unity and make this problem at the forefront of everyone's mind. Homo sapiens are very cool. I think we're an amazing species, but I think we're doing some pretty silly things.